Ahead on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Are parasites robbing you of the best performance from your cattle? We'll have some insights on this animal health challenge and talk about the best ways to get season-long control of parasites next.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Russell Nemitz. Thanks for joining us. You know, job one for cattlemen and cattlewomen is protecting the health of their animals. But one of the costly threats to the health and performance of cattle is unseen and often undetected. Internal parasites can rob an animal of its health and deliver a hard hit to an operation's bottom line. So today, we're going to focus on this critical issue and talk about some of the tactics and weapons that producers can use in the fight against parasites. Joining me now is a great panel of experts. We have Dr. Tom Van Dyke with Large Animal Veterinary Services for Merial, based in Virginia. Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, thanks, Russell. Glad to be here, first of all. Before Merial, I am veterinary services with Merial. Before Merial, I was in private veterinary practice back in Virginia for 30 years. And also back home, I have a cow-calf herd and run a few stocker steers. And I just want to thank my girls, my wife Elle and daughter Lillian, for taking care of that fence malfunction yesterday.
Well, we're happy to have you here. Also with us is Dr. Tony Morvetz with Large Animal Veterinary Services from Merial out in Nebraska. And Tony, share a little bit about yourself, please.
Thank you for having us, Russell. I'm born and raised in East Central Nebraska on a beef and grain operation. I went to University of Nebraska for undergrad, K-State to vet school, and then was in practice a few years in Illinois and Nebraska, and have since moved on working with animal health companies from Tennessee to Oregon. Now I'm back in Nebraska with my wife Erica and 5 kids, Wyatt, Macy, Levi, Nate, and Quinn. Yeah, I think that's all 5, but they hold the fort down while I'm away, and I'll be home soon.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks for being with us. And also joining us in the discussion today is Justin Robbins, a cow-calf producer from Iowa. And like the others, Justin, thanks for being with us, and talk a little bit about your family and your operation back home.
And again, thank you for having me, Russell, and I'd like to thank Merial for inviting me to have this opportunity. We run a cow-calf operation back home with my wife, Lacey, and my son, McKinley. We have a row crop operation as well, and we just try to keep the American cattle industry moving forward.
Well, again, gentlemen, thanks for being with us on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. We got a big item up for discussion, internal parasites, and it's a big issue for the U.S. beef cattle industry. Tom, let's start with you and maybe explain why it's important for producers to have a solid deworming program as part of their operation.
Well, Russell, you kind of named it in your introduction. Parasites rob the best performance of our cattle. They interfere with production, they interfere with feed efficiency, they interfere with growth and just overall health of the cattle. So cattlemen have a big investment both in their cattle and resources, and by deworming and taking care of the parasites, it helps get a better return on their investment.
You know, Tony, when we're talking about internal parasites and just how costly it can be for an operation, you know, talk about that economic impact, if you will, please.
Well, the good folks at Iowa State did a study looking at that impact on the investment of deworming cattle, and you can yield a return of up to $201 per head. And that factors in the nutritional, reproductive, and other efficiencies that you can gain on.
So do we see regional variations in the threat and the economic cost of these parasites?
Yes and no. Parasites are a threat everywhere that you have cattle. Where there are cattle, where there's dirt, there are worms. And so the degree of threat is going to change from place to place geographically.
You know, Justin, as a producer yourself, I mean, explain for folks at home, you know, how these internal parasites can affect operations like yours back in the Midwest.
In the Midwest, my cattle compete for corn country, so I have to make every acre count. And to make that happen, we have to be very conscientious of the dollars that we spend in certain places, and parasite control is paramount.
Hey, we know you guys are busy out there on your farms and ranches, and oftentimes there's probably bigger fires to put out, if you will. But do you think producers are taking this issue of internal parasites as serious as they should be?
I don't. I do not believe that producers really look at the overall picture. They're just looking at the pennies when there's actually dollars on the table that they need to be getting the return on.
So Tom, let me ask you this. What do producers need to understand about parasites and their life cycle?
Well, Russell, to be able to combat parasites or worms, we really need to know their life cycle. We need to go where they live and know what their weaknesses are. So just to start with the adult worm. The adult worm lives in the digestive tract of the animal. That adult worm lays eggs. The eggs pass into manure onto the pasture. The eggs then hatch to infective larvae, which climb up on grass blades and wait to be grazed, taken in as the next cow passes and grazes. And so when that larva gets back inside the cow, it matures to an adult again, the whole cycle starts again. It's also important to note that we talked about them being on grass, but if the fall comes, cold weather comes, these larvae can go to the ground. They go down into the soil and wait out a very cold winter. And then when the spring warmth hits the ground again, the grass grows, they're right back up onto the grass in the spring, ready to be effective again.
Yeah, that leads me into my next question for Tony. I mean, what type of effect do these parasites have on the pasture, which is the bread and butter of these farms and ranches?
Well, as you go through the summer grazing period, you get a significant buildup of parasites on the pasture, and a high degree of infectivity results. And even when it gets really hot, those parasites have a way of surviving that. They'll go into the ground, and then when it cools off in the fall, they'll reemerge just like they do in the spring.
Very good. Stay with us. We're going to continue this discussion, but first we have a video segment that provides some insight on how parasite control can improve your bottom line. Let's take a look.
Parasite control is one of the most important herd management decisions you make each season. Parasites can negatively impact the immune system and reduce appetite and nutritional efficiency. This leads to reduced weaning weights, lower conception rates, altered carcass composition, and decreased milk production. And that can have a significant impact on your operation's bottom line. In fact, according to a study by Iowa State, parasite control can make a difference of as much as $201 per head in break-even costs. This includes improved reproduction and earlier calving. The problem with conventional dewormers is that they only last a short time, requiring multiple treatments for season-long control. There's never been a product that controlled parasites all season long in a single convenient dose. Until now. LongRange is the first extended-release injection for parasite control. Thanks to its unique TheraPhase technology, the product is released into the bloodstream over an extended period of time, so a single treatment with LongRange controls parasites for up to 100 to 150 days. That means that with one spring treatment, you get the benefit of multiple strategically timed treatments throughout the grazing season, but without the additional stress and labor caused by repeated applications. By controlling parasites all season long, LongRange can help you get more profit out of your pasture. More efficient average daily gains, early calving, and earlier weight gains are all possible with better parasite control. In studies, calves treated with LongRange gained an average of more than 10% of their baseline body weight versus control calves. In separate studies, cattle gained 10 to 90 pounds more than control cattle. And in trials of animals with sarcoptic mange, cattle treated with LongRange gained 9 to 55 pounds more. Plus, with LongRange, you get all these performance benefits with less labor, less stress, and without the shrink caused by multiple handlings. Of all the animal health practices used to increase production, treating beef cattle for parasites gives producers the greatest economic return. And only LongRange gives you 100 to 150 days of parasite protection with one easy-to-administer injection of 1 milliliter per 110 pounds of body weight. To get the same level of control with conventional dewormers, you'd need 3 or more applications. When you add up the product costs, labor, handling stress, and shrink, one dose of LongRange makes a lot of economic sense. It's all the body condition, reproduction, and weaning weight benefits of a strategic deworming program in a single spring treatment. And that's what makes LongRange worth the investment. You have lots to gain. Talk to your Merial sales representative or veterinarian. Visit thelongrangelook.com for prescribing information or call 1-888-637-4251 to learn more. Do not treat within 48 days of slaughter, not for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows, or in veal calves. Post-injection site damage such as granulomas and necrosis can occur. These reactions have disappeared without treatment.
Well, as we continue our discussion today with our Merial panel of experts, Tom, let me ask you, how does a producer back home work with their local veterinarian in the right way to map out a correct parasite control program?
Well, Russell, we do advise producers work with their veterinarians to come up with a good plan. The veterinarian comes to the table with knowledge of the parasites and the various products used to combat the parasite. The veterinarian also knows maybe what's working in that geographical area. The producer knows the challenges and the resources of that farm, and if they get together and have that discussion, they can come up with a plan that really works and is specific for that operation.
Absolutely. Let's ask a producer himself. Justin, how do you work with your local vet on creating and mapping out the correct parasite control program for your ranch?
I work very closely with our vets. They'll come up with different technologies and ideas that work, and then I bring the reality into what works for a producer and how to make it all come together. And that's how we ended up with the plan that we're currently using.
Sounds good. Well, if you'd like more information about this topic, you can visit the website, thelongrangelook.com. And of course, you can always go to cattlemen-to-cattlemen.org for video replays of our show as well as producer educational segments. Still ahead on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll learn more about the cost of parasites and share the most effective strategies to gain season-long control over parasites. So stay with us. We'll have more right after this.
Want more profit out of your pasture? Then here's our 2 cents on using parasite control to make some dollars. In a trial of calves, LongRange outperformed Sidectin and Safeguard dewormers combined by as much as an extra 40 pounds. Yeah, that's a lot of extra profit, and that's why it pays to treat cattle with LongRange. Do not treat within 48 days of slaughter, not for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows or in veal calves. Post-injection site damage can occur. These reactions have disappeared without treatment. You can't afford another season without LongRange.
What does it mean to be dependable? It means you do what you say you'll do time and time again. Because performance isn't optional, and your task is essential. For over 95 years, we have proven ourselves to be the most dependable choice. That's why the cattlemen of this great nation trust Ritchie to provide fresh water on demand. Ritchie, proud to be a partner to the American cattlemen since 1921.
And welcome back to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we hear from the animal health experts at Merial, as well as Justin Robbins, a cow-calf producer from Iowa. You know, we've been talking about parasites on today's program, and Dr. Tom Van Dyke, let's talk about some new strategies and if they're available for producers across the country when it comes to controlling internal parasites.
Sure, Russell. Our strategies for controlling parasites have really evolved over time. At first, and for the longest time, we focused on trying to deworm the cow, trying to get rid of the parasites in the individual cow. And then it was discovered, or we realized that we also need to control the parasites on the pasture, those infective larvae. And so we came up with the strategies called strategic deworming, which means periodic, well-placed dewormings at a time that we can try to break the parasite life cycle and try to clean up the pasture and reduce the larval numbers on the pasture. So that was a great strategy, but it took a lot of time and labor. So now with the launch of LongRange from Merial, we actually can get the goals of the strategic deworming program completed with a single injection, a single treatment at the first of the grazing season. We can break the life cycle of the parasites and clean up the pasture.
Wow, that is some great news for producers. In fact, we have a short video that provides some additional insight on LongRange and how it works. So let's take a look.
The fight against parasites has been going on for decades. The early levamisols, benzimidazoles, and the newer avermectin chemistries are just a few of the tools producers and veterinarians have used to combat production losses from parasites. These days, rotational grazing and strategically timed deworming treatments are also common management recommendations. But the real problem is that as soon as conventional dewormers wear off, cattle are being reinfected by parasite larvae already on the pasture. In the past, there's never been a single product that controlled parasites long enough to break this cycle and make a real difference in the number of parasites on the pasture. But now, there's LongRange, with up to 100 to 150 days of parasite control in a single treatment. After the initial injection, the unique TheraPhase technology in LongRange releases the product into the bloodstream over an extended period of time. That gives you the power to break the parasite life cycle and actually reduce the number of infective parasites on the pasture. It's the first product in a new category of parasite control. One spring treatment that gives you the benefit of strategically timed treatments throughout the grazing season without the additional labor and stress caused by multiple applications. Nematode larvae have no problem overwintering on the pasture, even in the coldest regions. They're waiting to infect cattle as soon as they are turned out. The eggs, shed during the last grazing season, become infective larvae that overwinter on the pasture. Once the weather begins to warm, infective larvae travel up grass stems and are ingested by grazing cattle. After these larvae are ingested, it can take a few weeks for them to mature into egg-laying adults. Those adult parasites begin producing millions of eggs that pass with feces onto the pasture, where the cycle begins again. The same thing happens during hot, dry periods of the summer. Parasite larvae move back underground to stay protected. This happens about the same time that the grass stops growing. Once the weather improves and the grass begins growing again, parasite larvae come back out, ready to be ingested. It's important to understand this cycle of dormancy and infectivity because this initial wave of nematodes early in the grazing period is what creates a big increase in parasite pressure later in the season. To break this cycle of parasite infection and reinfection, it takes about 100 days of continuous parasite control. Thanks to the unique TheraPhase technology, a single spring treatment with LongRange controls parasites for up to 100 to 150 days. When treated for that long, the herd functions like a filter for parasites. As cattle graze, they pick up infective larvae, which are then killed when exposed to LongRange. Those larvae never develop into adults, so the number of parasite eggs being shed back onto the pasture starts to drop. Over the course of 100 to 150 days, this effect can dramatically decrease levels of infective larvae on the pasture, and that can add up to real performance benefits for your herd. Parasite control is one of the most important management decisions you make each season. According to a well-publicized study by Iowa State, parasite control can make a difference of $201 per head in break-even costs. Most of those gains come from improvements in reproduction, but that's not the only part of your operation that benefits. Calf weaning weights have been shown to dramatically improve as a result of good parasite control. More efficient average daily gains, early calving, and earlier weight gains are all possible with better parasite control. Because when you control the parasites in your pasture, you can get more gain out of your pasture. And with LongRange, you get all those performance benefits with less labor, less stress, and without the shrink caused by multiple handlings, because one treatment in spring continues to work for up to 100 to 150 days. Before LongRange, It would take multiple treatments throughout the season to make a real difference in parasite pressure and reap the benefits. But the unique TheraPhase technology in LongRange allows the active ingredient to enter the bloodstream over an extended time frame. It's the only drug that has this unique formulation, and it's only available in LongRange. This TheraPhase technology gives you up to 100 to 150 days of parasite control with a single spring treatment. Conventional dewormers can't offer the level of persistent control of LongRange. And unlike previous long-acting products, LongRange is a single, easy-to-administer injection of 1 milliliter per 110 pounds of body weight. More convenience, more persistent activity, and unique TheraPhase technology for extended release. That's what makes LongRange the ultimate parasite solution. Talk to your Merial sales representative or veterinarian. Visit thelongrangelook.com for prescribing information. Or call 1-888-637-4251 for more information. Don't treat within 48 days of slaughter, not for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows or in veal calves. Post-injection site damage, such as granulomas and necrosis, can occur. These reactions have disappeared without treatment.
Continuing our discussion with our Merial panel of experts and our cow-calf producer friend, Justin Robbins from Iowa. Tony Morvetz, let's talk about LongRange and maybe tell folks at home how the product works.
Well, as we saw in that video, it's a long-acting injectable dewormer for cattle. When you inject it under the skin, 1 cc per 110 pounds of body weight, the carrier, called TheraPhase, mixes with the liquids under the skin and creates a gel-like matrix. It's non-reactive, non-inflammatory, and it stays there for about 70 days or so, releasing the active ingredient epinomectin, which keeps that cow dewormed and eliminates the reinfection of the uptake of those infective larvae. And then at about day 70, 75, it begins to break down into carbon dioxide and water and releases a second wave of active ingredient that takes it on out to 150 days. So instead of using a bolus or an implant, the TheraPhase is there to deliver the drug, and then it disappears, which is really amazing.
So since we have a producer on the panel, Dr. Morvetz, let's ask Justin Robbins out of Iowa about why he decided to give LongRange a try, and of course we all want to know the results.
My vets approached me 3 years ago and wanted to know if I'd be willing to give this a try. They knew I had the equipment and the fortitude to go ahead and give this a try, so I did. I've continued to use this for 3 years because of the results that we've seen. I've really picked up on some weaning weights. Over the last 3 years, we've increased our weaning weights by 42 pounds, and it just continues every year to keep getting higher and higher. And the overall health of the herd is just impeccable.
So I think the next question folks at home really want to know, Dr. Van Dyke, is how LongRange stacks up against some of its competitors out there.
Right, they would want to know that. One way we compare LongRange with other dewormers is persistency, how long the dewormer lasts in the animal after treatment. And so before LongRange, some of the other dewormers lasted 30 to 42 days, depending on the parasite. Now with LongRange, we can get up to 150 days on some parasites.
So Dr. Morvetz and Justin, when would a producer typically apply LongRange?
Well, Russell, I'm a simple guy. The box is green in color, and so that kind of reminds me, if I've got cattle going to green grass, that's a good time to use it. If even only a 30-day window of period of grass to be grazed, that'd be a good time to use LongRange.
And as a producer, I personally use it during calving season and inject the last time no later than going to grass.
Tom, what about fall deworming? Can you talk about that for us?
Sure. In some parts of the country, grass persists. Now there's that word again. Grass is there way past September when we think about deworming. I mean about weaning our calves. So that's still a great time. If we get up to 30 days still on pasture, we've still determined that returns the economic benefit from LongRange if you have as little as 30 days. So always think about fall deworming if you're in that part of the country where there's still grass.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to talk more about LongRange and talk about effective deworming programs when we come back. If you'd like to learn more, you can also visit thelongrangelook.com. Don't go away. We'll have more with our panel right after this.
Want more profit out of your pasture? Then here's our 2 cents on using parasite control to make some dollars. In a trial of calves, LongRange outperformed Sidectin and Safeguard dewormers combined by as much as an extra 40 pounds. Yeah, that's a lot of extra profit, and that's why it pays to treat cattle with LongRange. Do not treat within 48 days of slaughter. Not for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows or in veal calves. Post-injection site damage can occur. These reactions have disappeared without treatment. You can't afford another season without LongRange.
And welcome back. Today we're focusing on internal parasites in cattle and the best ways to combat them. And we've talked about LongRange, the parasite life cycle, and pasture contamination. Now we want to talk a little bit about what are the benefits of treating the cow. And Dr. Moravets, explain for us, please.
Well, treating the cow gets you the best bang for the buck. Not only are you treating the cow for obvious reasons, she's the factory. She's the factory for the calf inside, creating the milk source, making it a nutritional source of nutrition for that calf inside, but she's also the factory for the calf inside for next year's calf crop. And lastly, she's unfortunately the factory for the eggs that are getting shed back on the pasture. So if we're treating her, we get a fourfold effect that really makes our dollar go further and has the biggest impact on the production system.
Absolutely. And on that note, we have another video to share with you. Here's some additional insights on the value of treating your cows.
Parasite control is one of the most important herd management decisions you make each season. As you probably know, just a 10% improvement in weaned calf crop reduces the break-even by $16.82 per hundredweight and increases net income by $120 per pair. But if you're focusing your deworming protocol just on calves, parasites are literally sucking away at your profitability. Parasites in cows can negatively impact the immune system and reduce nutritional efficiency. This leads to lower body condition, which reduces conception rates and decreases milk production. This in turn can affect weaning weights in calves. That's why parasite control in the cow is essential to cow-calf profitability. As you know, you can't have a calf crop without calves. An open cow isn't just underperforming, she's actually costing you money. By managing for conception, you're making sure your cows are actually in the game. Cows that conceive late calve late, and that can decrease weaning weights by as much as 40 or more pounds. So managing for conception should not only target ways to get cows to breed back, but breed back as early as possible. Stabilizing weight is vital. This graph shows the energy needs for milk and body maintenance. Peak lactation comes approximately 85 days post-calving. There is a feed shortfall and loss of body energy stores that take place at that time. But this is also when a cow needs to cycle and settle to stay on schedule for the heaviest calf possible at weaning. Because of these energy shortfalls, however, cows are often losing weight at this point, and cows that are losing weight are 17% less likely to conceive at first service and 14% won't show heat at all. Parasite infections in cows reduce feed efficiency and appetite. Effective parasite control at this time can help stabilize the cow's weight so she has the energy to conceive. But that's hard to do because conventional dewormers only last 14 to 42 days. So even if you treated your cows with a conventional dewormer when you turned them out, it's no longer working at peak lactation. Only LongRange delivers season-long parasite control in a single dose. But earlier and better conception is only part of the story. Producers tend to focus on worms in their cattle, but it's the worms on your pasture that should really be the concern, especially the L3 larva phase. Initially, the only larvae on the grass are those that have overwintered in the soil. Without a host, these larvae will begin starving to death once the temperature and their metabolism starts to increase. This takes place before calves start grazing. But as cows eat the larvae, the parasite life cycle continues, and the cows load the pasture with new eggs. These eggs hatch, and larvae build up on the pasture throughout the summer. These are the larvae that eventually infect the calves. Deworming cows results in fewer eggs being deposited on the pasture for a period of time, depending on the dewormer. The problem with conventional dewormers is that they only last a short time. So even if cows were dewormed in the spring, the dewormer has worn off by the time parasite larvae reach their heaviest concentration midsummer. which is also about the time calves start grazing. When you do a spring treatment of cows with LongRange, the cows act like a filter for the pasture because few overwintering juveniles that are ingested become adults. That means fewer eggs are shed onto the pasture to infect calves or to overwinter to infect cows and calves next season. So you'll see the benefits in 2 calf crops, this year's and next's. By controlling parasites all season, LongRange can help you get more profit out of your pasture. How much? In a study, cow-calf pairs were treated with LongRange or Cydectin plus Safeguard. After 104 days, steers treated with LongRange gained 40 pounds more than the Cydectin Safeguard group. At $2 per pound, that's $80 more per steer. Ready to see a difference in your herd's performance? Visit thelongrangelook.com to see how your current program stacks up to LongRange. Then talk to your veterinarian for prescribing information or call 1-888-637-4251. Do not treat within 48 days of slaughter, not for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows or in veal calves. Post-injection site damage, such as granulomas and necrosis, can occur. These reactions have disappeared without treatment.
Continuing on with our panel of experts, Tom, in the video, it mentioned that cows contaminate the pasture more than calves. Can you speak to that, please?
Sure. Cows are the contaminator of the pastures. If you think about turning the cow-calf pair out on the pasture in the spring, the calf is depending on the cow's milk for its nutrition at that stage of its life, but the cow is depending on the pasture for her nutrition. So she sets about grazing up the grass, and remember those infective larvae that came out of the ground and are now in the grass ready to infect the cow. She picks those up, they mature to adults, start laying eggs, thousands of eggs, which then go out in the manure. After a few turns of that cycle, you can imagine that there's a huge buildup of infective larvae on the pasture just about the time that the calves start grazing.
Tony, what are some of the other benefits of treating that cow?
Well, when you treat a cow with LongRange, instead of cleaning her up in the fall, you keep her clean through the grazing season. And what you see from the benefits of that is improved body condition, which lends itself to better improved reproductive efficiency. So she tends to cycle sooner, settle faster as a result with improved body condition.
What about you, Justin? How has LongRange helped to improve your profitability?
In our line of work, we have to really consider all avenues. And what I have started to see is the cows are more content. The cows are happier longer. And whenever you're delivering feed, every time you drive that tractor, it just costs you money. So we are starting to deliver a little bit less feed. They are more efficient. And what we're seeing then is that the cow is, as she's more efficient, then the calf becomes more efficient, and we wean bigger calves.
All right, thanks a lot, gentlemen. Stay with us. We'll have more of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen right after this.
The 2017 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show is set for Music City, Nashville, Tennessee. It's the cattle industry's biggest convention with education, networking, and fun. Plus, you can check out the huge NCBA Trade Show, outstanding entertainment, and much more. Mosey on down to Music City for the 2017 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show, February 1st through the 3rd. Visit beefusa.org for more.
And welcome back. Today we're talking about the serious challenges posed by internal parasites in cattle. And we've learned about parasite control and the importance of treating cows. So let's turn to the topic of resistance. And Tony, what can you tell folks at home about this?
Well, resistance is something that should be on the minds of every producer out there that is deworming their cattle. It doesn't matter what dewormer we're using. There's only a finite number of them that work and work really well. And if we underdose, mismanage, mistime the use of these products, we can lose the efficacy of them and then cause resistance to happen.
Resistance is clearly a very important issue. So let's learn a little bit more about it in this next video segment.
Because of the condition and health benefits, strategically deworming cows and calves has become a standard practice for most cattle operations. But with any deworming protocol come concerns about resistance. Resistance happens when parasites are no longer controlled by a specific deworming ingredient. But the presence of resistant parasites does not equal a resistance problem. At any time, there will be a few parasites with genes that make them resistant to a deworming product. Resistance is caused when these naturally resistant parasites increase in population and then breed with each other and shed eggs back onto the pasture. LongRange is the first extended release injection that gives you up to 150 days of parasite control in a single treatment. Its TheraPhase formulation offers unique pharmacokinetics that allow LongRange to work for an extended period of time and then quickly leave the animal's system. The short amount of time at subtherapeutic concentrations helps ensure LongRange doesn't select for resistance any more than a single treatment with a conventional dewormer. Understanding the pharmacokinetics of your dewormer is important. A curve plots the presence of a deworming compound in the animal's body. Selection for resistance occurs at 2 points on the curve, at the peak or head and at the tail as the drug's concentration tapers off below therapeutic levels. Between the head and the tail is the area under the curve, or total exposure. Parasites that survive the initial peak and exposure are said to be resistant to that level of insecticide. However, having a very high initial PK peak or longer exposure may still kill them. At the tail, products kill only very susceptible nematodes. A long tail, then, may actually favor the resistant parasites in the population by decreasing the number of very susceptible parasites, leaving a greater proportion of resistant parasites to meet and breed. In a study, long-acting products were shown to be effective against tough-to-kill parasites either by having a large area under the curve or having a very high initial peak. LongRange has both a high initial peak and a large area under the curve. How high? Let's compare it to Eprenex. Considered to be one of the best anthelmintics in the macrocyclic lactone class, very few parasites survive its peak. The PK peak of LongRange is 2.5 times higher than Eprenex. LongRange has another unique feature. In addition to a high initial peak and an extended duration to about 70 days, the TheraPhase formulation delivers a second peak between 90 to 100 days. As it tapers off, it continues to stay above effective concentrations for up to 150 days, depending on parasite species. Conventional dewormers have persistency of 14 to 42 days. That's not long enough for season-long control. For longer periods, conventional dewormers can be used 3 times over the course of the season. Depending on the timing of application, this could equal 3 tails, while LongRange delivers 2 peaks with a single tail. Of all the animal health practices used to increase production, treating beef cattle for parasites gives producers the greatest economic return. With its high initial peak, long exposure, and fast withdrawal from the animal's system, LongRange helps you balance concerns about resistance with best management practices, which should include continuing to monitor resistance through a fecal egg count reduction program. And because LongRange controls parasites on the pasture, it also works as part of a refugia program where some cattle are left untreated. And only LongRange gives you up to 150 days of parasite protection with one easy-to-administer injection of 1 milliliter per 110 pounds of body weight. Talk to your Merial sales representative or veterinarian. Visit thelongrangelook.com for prescribing information or call 1-888-637-4251 to learn more. Do not treat within 48 days of slaughter. Not for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows or in veal calves. Post-injection site damage, such as granulomas or necrosis, can occur. These reactions have disappeared without treatment.
Continuing on with our discussion with our panel of experts about how important it is to control those profit-robbing internal parasites. Dr. Morvetz, what does it mean for LongRange to have TheraPhase technology in relation to this topic of resistance?
Well, having TheraPhase technology means that we can deliver the drug at a high level, a high worm-killing level for a long period of time without harming the animal, but ultimately wearing down and burning out tough-to-kill or potentially resistant parasites.
Tom, what about the trial work you've done with cows and calves? Tell folks at home about that and some of the results that you were able to gather.
Well, producers want to know, will this product work for me in my geography on my operation? So since the launch of LongRange, trials have been conducted all over the country. And LongRange has been tested against all the other dewormers. And LongRange has given consistent advantage to deworming with any other product in all geographies.
Tony, you did a comparison trial with Dectomax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with calves on cows treated with Dectomax versus LongRange. The LongRange calves gained an average of 0.22 pounds per head per day better than the calves treated with Dectomax. And that's, in addition to that, those cows that were treated with LongRange gained an average of 17 more pounds during that time. So not only did we wean bigger calves, we had bigger cows at the end of the grazing season.
Yeah, and those pounds equal money. Justin, talk about your experience with it.
My individual data that I've collected was actually greater than even what the chart shows.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, gentlemen, for your insights. We appreciate it. And stay with us as we'll have more with our panelists right after this on Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Want more profit out of your pasture? Then here's our 2 cents on using parasite control to make some dollars. In a trial of calves, LongRange outperformed Sidectin and Safeguard dewormers combined by as much as an extra 40 pounds. Yeah, that's a lot of extra profit, and that's why it pays to treat cattle with LongRange. Do not treat within 48 days of slaughter. Not for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows or in veal calves. Post-injection site damage can occur. These reactions have disappeared without treatment. You can't afford another season without LongRange.
And welcome back to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we continue to get insights on the costly issue of internal parasites with our panel of experts. You know, as we talk about controlling internal parasites, gentlemen, what are producers and veterinarians saying out there in the field about LongRange? Tony, let's start with you.
Well, they're exceptionally happy. I mean, the results go beyond the label. Guys that try it swear by it, and once they try it, they don't go back away from it.
Justin, what are you hearing?
You know, the initial cost is really shocking a lot of people. You know, in today's world, everybody is so tight with a lot of things. So, in today, people are so worried about spending the penny to make $1, and I just don't feel that you can afford to make that mistake today.
Very well said. And to follow up on that, let's hear from another producer about his experience using LongRange.
I like being outside and around land and getting my feet wet and still being able to be dirty and muddy and nasty when I get home at 50 years old. I like to wear jeans every day. I enjoy taking care of animals, and there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. Parasites in a cow herd can reduce how they graze. You may have plenty of grass, but if a cow's full of parasites, she won't graze as effectively as she would if she was clean. And if she's not getting all she needs, she's not raising a good calf. So LongRange was able to not only clean the parasites out of the cattle, but offer up to 150 days of protection against reinfestation of parasites. So that's, of course, attractive to have that long a time to where you don't have to worry about a cow being reinfected and losing her grazing ability and staying clean. We're in the southeast, so raising cattle here is a little different than it is in the rest of the country. The growing season's just about year-round. The grass is green year-round. The cattle graze it year-round. So in the fall and the winter, when the cattle are grazing close to the ground and the rest of the world doesn't have to worry about parasites, we do. So LongRange offers protection in those months, and sometimes that's when we need it the most. One thing I noticed with LongRange was that the cattle seem to thrive and shine longer into the summer than previously. So of course I like seeing that the cattle were gaining better and healthier looking, and that's a huge deal for us. I've been making my living doing this for quite a while now. I know when I use LongRange that I can count on it to work the way it's supposed to. That's one less thing we have to worry about. I know the cattle will be protected from parasites when we use it, and it's pretty cut and dry.
Do not treat within 48 days of slaughter, not for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows, or in veal calves. Post-injection site damage such as granulomas and necrosis can occur. These reactions have disappeared without treatment.
Continuing on with our discussion, so the next question, Dr. Morvetz, is when should a producer decide when to use a dewormer like LongRange?
Well, the decision-making process should really start right now. I mean, you're watching a show on deworming, now's a good time to really consider your options. But anytime you're looking at your vaccine protocols, talking with your veterinarian, those are great times to talk about what should we be maybe doing differently.
Justin, as a cow-calf man, do you concur?
I personally think about parasites year-round. I think about parasites just as often as I do what I'm going to breed the cows to the following year. So it's a year-round decision for me.
All right, thanks a lot for those comments, gentlemen. And to find out more about this and other topics related to animal health and parasites, visit the website, thelongrangelook.com. Don't go away. The cowboy poet himself, Baxter Black, is coming up next.
You know, there is a saying, hay lost in the field robs yield. That's why John Deere balers are designed with tightly spaced belts so you capture more crop in every pass. Compared to other balers with wide-spaced belt designs, John Deere balers let you put up more quality hay and put more money in your pocket. That's how we run. And that's why nothing runs like a Deere.
Parasites will lose you more money than any other disease out there besides infertility. So, parasites is something that we have to control, and that's what VetGun does for us. It's tough out there on a ranch, but with the ease of the VetGun, it's a one-man operation, and whenever you can get one thing to work out great throughout that day, it just makes my life a little easier.
We know who made that hitch. We know who cut the steel, who milled the ball, and who welded the seams. We know who tested, measured, and checked. We even know who thought the whole thing up. We're B&W, and we know your hitch. Because we don't make them halfway around the world. We make them all right here. B&W. Trusted.
Hoot had a way of keeping the bubble level, which ain't as easy as it sounds in the cricks and hollers around Ada. Old man Johnson was tight with a dollar bill, but flexible when it came to running cattle, meaning he turned them out on his place and gathered them up, but the numbers didn't always jibe. He owned a small bunch of steers that had evaded sale day for at least 3 Octobers. He'd made several attempts to bring him in himself, going so far as to enlist the aid of a cowboy or two, 5 Boy Scouts on 3-wheelers, a bunch of coon hunters, 6 archaeologists from the University of Tulsa, and a water witcher from Fittstown. But alas, the wild cattle still remained free. As a last resort, Mr. Johnson asked Hoot what he'd charge to gather his lost critters. $10 a head, said Hoot. Well, Hoot and Bill saddled up, loosed the dogs, and lit out from the corral. It only took the dogs 10 minutes to find the strays. They could hear the dogs baying and crying just past the first holler. Hoot called off the dogs, and he and Billy started the herd down the fence line. They drove them straight to the corral, marched them to the gates like teenagers in line at a Garth Brooks concert. Well, old man Johnson ran out of the house looking at his watch. I need to get some dogs like that. Hoot rode up and dismounted. 8 head, he said. Well, how much'll that be? Asked Mr. Johnson, sliding his billfold out of his overall bib and slipping the rubber band off. 8 head, said Hoot. That'll be $80. Whoa, said Mr. Johnson. I can't pay that much. You only took 15 minutes. He looked at Hoot. Hoot looked back at him a second and then spun on his heels, stepped to the corral gate, and swung her open with a wave of his hand and shooshed the steers outside. It took 10 days for old man Johnson to call Hoot again. I'd be glad to, said Hoot. Of course, the price has gone up. This is Baxter Black from out there.
All right, thanks a lot, Baxter. We always enjoy our visits with you. Stay with us. We'll have more right after this.
I'm an NCBA member because NCBA, they look at the facts, they look at the history, and they look what's good for the industry.
It's important to be NCBA members just because of what NCBA does. They keep us informed about a lot of things that are going on nationwide.
The reason we're an NCBA member is we think that it's the best voice that the cattle people have.
Join NCBA today. Head to beefusa.org or call 866-USA-BEEF.
And welcome back. You know, as we wrap up our program today, I'd now like each of you to share some final thoughts about the parasite issue and what we've learned today. And Dr. Van Dyke, let's start with you.
I just want to say that LongRange is a tool to be considered by producers who want their cattle to produce at the best of their genetic potential, and for those producers who want to get the best return on their investment dollar. If you want to know more, go to thelongrangelook.com.
Tony, what about you?
Everybody likes thicker, slicker, happier, healthier cattle. And that's where LongRange really needs to be considered as an option.
And Justin, you've shared some very useful insight as a cow-calf producer yourself about LongRange. What's your final thought?
I personally feel as a producer, you can't afford to leave it in the box. You need to use it.
Well, again, gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. And thanks again to our panel of experts for their insights on this very important topic. Before we go, here's some very important safety information.
Don't treat within 48 days of slaughter, not for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows or in veal calves. Post-injection site damage, such as granulomas and necrosis, can occur. These reactions have disappeared without treatment.
Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Russell Nemitz. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here again next week on RFD TV.